Hey everyone. So recently, Sam Altman sat down with Tucker Carlson for an interview, and I think we'll look back at this interview as one of the most influential and important interviews of our generation, with one of the will probably go down as the most important technical leader of our generation, Sam Altman. And Tucker Carlson gets into some really interesting conversation about AI and morality. And so just want to provide some high level commentary on this interview.
More, they're all, able to achieve more, start new businesses, come up with new knowledge. And that feels pretty good.
So if it's nothing more than a machine and just the product of its inputs, then the two obvious questions, like what are the inputs? Like what's the moral framework that's been put into the technology? Like what is right or wrong according to ChatGPT?
So OpenAI, just a high level overview. So essentially, OpenAI has really compressed any information that's available on the public internet. OpenAI has compressed that knowledge, and then OpenAI determines with weights, right, which parts of this compressed knowledge are important, which parts are not as important, which parts to keep in, which parts to keep out, right? So this is where you start to understand that there is a morality or some decision-making process of what's right and what's wrong baked in to OpenAI. So Tucker Carlson's really getting into some important conversation here.
Do you want me to answer that one first?
I would.
Question.
Yeah.
So on that one, someone said something early on in ChatGPT when that really has stuck with me, which is one person at a lunch table said something like, we're trying to train this to be like a human, like we're trying to learn like a human does and read these books and whatever. And then another person said, no, we're really like training this to be like the collective of all of humanity. We're reading everything. We're trying to learn everything. We're trying to see all these perspectives. And if we do our job right, all of humanity, good, bad, a very diverse set of perspectives, some things that we'll feel really good about, some things that we'll feel bad about, that's all in there. Like this is learning the kind of collective experience, knowledge.
So what Sam Altman is saying here is, sure, they have an OpenAI spec that has some absolute bounds of what they determine is right and what is wrong. But what he's saying is that if society kind of has this distributed average of different moral beliefs, right? He's going to try to take an average of all of these beliefs and then build a general tool that will provide as many alternatives and options and as much discussion, general discussion about different beliefs as possible, right? But some of the issue with this is you get down to some of these topics that you really need to take a stance on, right? And Tucker Carlson gets into some of that later on in the interview.
Learnings of humanity. Now, the base model gets trained that way, but then we do have to align it to behave one way or another and just say, I will answer this question, I won't answer this question. And we have this thing called...
Now, another thing that's interesting is OpenAI, they compress this knowledge, right? Do a pre-training or a training on the model. And those averages, those weighted averages, that determine the generative nature of the LLM are not released to the public, right? So OpenAI does release the specs, but actually understanding what's going on at a foundational level, we don't know that. And some of these internal discussions that they've had around, what's right and what's wrong, what information did we keep in, what did we keep out, is not available to the public.
The model spec, where we try to say, here are the rules we'd like the model to follow. It may screw up, but you can at least tell if it's doing something you don't like. Is that a bug or is that intended? And we have a debate process with the world to get input on that spec. We give people a lot of freedom and customization within that. There are, absolute bounds that we draw. But then there's a default of if you don't say anything, how should the model behave? What should it do? How should it answer moral questions? How should it refuse to do something? What should it do? And this is a really hard problem. That we have a lot of users now, and they come from very different life perspectives and what they want.
So again, he's talking about how, he's just not distributing this intelligence in one country, right? He's distributing this intelligence all over the world. And so he's considering, the morality of each individual country, and then somehow making a decision, right? And so there is some group of researchers and philosophers or whoever OpenAI pulled in to help solve this problem, but we don't know their names, right? The one guy that we know is Sam Altman. So really, when it comes to these morality questions, the buck stops with him, and that's why Tucker Carlson is asking him these hard-hitting questions.
But on the whole, I have been pleasantly surprised with the model's ability to learn and apply a moral framework.
But what moral framework? I mean, the sum total of like world literature or philosophy is at war with itself. Like the Marquis de Sade is, like nothing in common with the Gospel of John.
Right.
So like, how do you just?
So here, Tucker Carlson, Sam Altman says, "Hey, we build this framework, and OpenAI does have a spec published." But who was involved in that decision-making process and what are their beliefs? We don't have transparency into that. So that's what Tucker Carlson's getting into here.
Decide which is superior.
That's why we wrote this like model spec of here's how we're going to handle these cases.
Right, but what criteria did you use to decide what the model is? Like who decided that? Who did you consult? Like why is the Gospel of John better than the Marquis de Sade?
We consulted like hundreds of.
So Sam Altman kind of giggles there, which I think a little bit more seriousness would have been appreciated from a leader of his magnitude in this moment. But I think he's chuckling because, he knows that it's not just him that's saying, hey, this is right and this is wrong, right? It's really a lot of different people that are involved in the process. But if we don't know who those people are, and the only person that is available for us to talk to is Sam Altman, this is an important question that he needs to be able to answer.
Moral philosophers, people who thought about like ethics of technology and systems. And at the end, we had to like make some decisions. The reason we try to write these down is because A, we won't get everything right. B, we need the input of the world. And we have found a lot of cases where there was an example of something that seemed to us like, a fairly clear decision of what to allow or not to allow, where users convinced us like, hey, by blocking this thing that you think is an easy decision to make,
So again, in Sam Altman's defense, this is a constantly evolving thing here, right? Like morality doesn't remain the same over the course of many years. So this is a process that will be constantly evolving, and there's no one cement answer that, hey, this is exactly what we believe in, and we're not gonna evolve that, right? So he's being very, very delicate, very careful with the way that he answers these questions.
Are not allowing this other thing, which is important, and there's like a difficult trade-off there. In general, the attention that so a principle that I normally like is to treat our adult users like adults. Very strong guarantees on privacy, very strong guarantees on individual user freedom. And this is a tool we are building. You get to use it within very broad framework. Within a very, very broad framework. On the other hand, as this technology becomes more and more powerful, there are clear examples of where society has an interest that is in significant tension with user freedom. And we could start with an obvious one, like, should ChatGPT teach you how to make a bioweapon?
Yeah, so now they're getting into, what are the obvious, I guess, tasks that ChatGPT should not allow you or not help you figure out how to do that, right? And obviously one of them is how to create a bioweapon, but there's more nuanced topics that aren't as clear that, hey, it's obvious we shouldn't let anyone try to make a bioweapon, but some of this other stuff is not as obvious.
Now, you might say, hey, I'm just really interested in biology and I'm a biologist and I want to, I'm not going to do anything bad with this. I just want to learn. And I could go read a bunch of books, but ChatGPT can teach me faster and I want to learn how to, I want to learn about like novel virus synthesis or whatever.
Watch what bread does to our body.
Sourdough.
Real sourdough that
excuse
is
the ad,
fermented
guys.
for 24
And maybe you do. Maybe you really don't want to like cause any harm. But I don't think it's in society's interest for ChatGPT to help people build bioweapons. And so that's a case.
Sure, that's an easy one though. There are a lot of tougher ones.
I did say start with an easy one.
Yeah. We've got a new partner.
So skipping forward ahead of this ad, guys. Okay, here we go.
Technology will be in effect making them for us.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I don't agree with it'll be making them for us, but it will have to.
it'll be influencing the decisions for sure. And because it'll be embedded in daily life. And so who made these decisions? Like who are the people who decided that one thing is better than another?
Again, Tucker's pretty persistent here. He's trying to figure out, he's trying to put a face to the name, right? Who made this moral framework? Who developed it?
You mean like
What are their names?
which kind of decision?
The basic, the specs that you that you alluded to that creates.
Sam Altman's like, hey, there's so many decisions being made by so many people, and he kind of has a little reaction. You can see it in his face. He's like, hey, it's not me making the decision. But then Tucker's like, well, who is it then?
The framework that does attach a moral weight to worldviews and decisions, like, liberal democracy is better than Nazism or whatever. They seem obvious, and in my view are obvious, but are still moral decisions. So who made those calls?
As a matter of principle, I don't like dox our team, but we have a model behavior team and the people who want to.
Well, it affects the world.
What I was going to say.
Yeah, so that's where, again, Sam Altman's saying, hey, I don't want to tell you who they are. And Tucker's like, dude, you better, we need to know, right? It's not a question of, privacy. This is a question of, we need to know who's involved in these decisions that are impacting the world, right? At a scale that has been unimaginable so far.
Is the person I think you should hold accountable for those calls is me. Like I'm a public face eventually. Like I'm the one that can overrule one of those decisions or our board. And
you just turned 40 this spring.
I won't make every decision.
So he's saying buck stops with him, and there Tucker goes, you're only 40, right? So, have you even had enough lived experience to be able to make these decisions, right? And obviously Sam Altman has many different people in the room with him, and I'm sure of all different ages. But again, Tucker really asking some good questions here.
It's pretty heavy. I mean, do you think and it's not an attack, but I wonder if you recognize sort of the importance.
How do you think we're doing on it?
I'm not sure, but I think
here Altman kind of gets a little frustrated there. And he's like, hey, what do you think, right?
These decisions will have, global consequences that we may not recognize at first. And so I just wonder,
there's a lot.
Do you get into bed at night and think like the future of the world hangs on my judgment?
Look, I don't sleep that well at night. There's a lot of stuff that I feel a lot of weight on, but probably nothing more than the fact that every day hundreds of millions of people talk to our model. And I don't actually worry about us getting the big moral decisions wrong. Maybe we will get those wrong too. But what I lose more sleep over is the very small decisions we make about a way a model may behave slightly differently. But it's talking to hundreds of millions of people, so the net impact is big.
So, but I mean, all through history, like recorded history up until like 1945, people always deferred to what they conceived of as a.
Yeah, so here Tucker Carlson, I guess, is talking about religion and how throughout history, we have really looked to a higher power for answers, and usually there's been a clear set what is are clear defined rules of what we consider right or wrong, and these are the principles that help us develop our morality. And so he's saying, hey, this is the first time in history maybe where there isn't a clear set of principles, but this is also a technology that is similar to what you might consider a higher power.
Higher power in order. Hammurabi did this. Every moral code is written with reference to a higher power. There's never been anybody who's like, well, that kind of seems better than that. Everybody appeals to a higher power. And you said that you don't really believe that there's a higher power communicating with you. So I'm wondering, like, where did you get your moral framework?
I mean, like everybody else, I think the environment I was brought up in probably is the biggest thing, like my family, my community, my school.
So it's a little concerning here because Sam Altman won't reveal the names of the researchers that helped make these critical decisions. So he says the buck stops with him. Then Tucker Carlson said, hey, how did you form your morality? Right. And he kind of takes a minute to spit it out there. And it seems like he almost maybe hasn't thought that through. And he's doing all of this on the fly. Right. So props to Sam Altman for even making it through this interview. But it seems like he had a little hesitation there. He's trying to understand how he developed his morality, right? It's still not fully clear to him.
My religion, probably that.
If you struggle with focus,
And
this sound
bear with me,
might
guys,
change everything.
on the ad.
Do you ever think, which is, I mean, I think that's a very American answer, like everyone kind of feels that way. But in your specific case, since you said these decisions rest with you, that means that the milieu in which you grew up and the assumptions that you imbibed over years are going to be transmitted to the globe, to billions of people. That's like a big thing.
So this is a really critical point. Again, this is the first time in history where we're all talking to one system that has some sort of morality baked into it, that it's not completely transparent and clear of where that, how we came to that morality. Only the insiders at OpenAI and these LLM labs know that.
I want to be clear. I view myself more as like I think the world, like our user base, is going to approach the collective world as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I think what we should do is try to reflect the moral, I don't want to say average, but the like collective moral view of that user base. There's plenty of things that ChatGPT allows that I personally would disagree with.
So again, here he mentions trying to take a weighted average of society's moral views. And you can imagine this is an incredibly difficult thing to do, right? He has to set guardrails on this. The scope of this system is massive. From my understanding, we don't even understand how the neural net truly operates. Like, it makes decisions sometimes where we know what the weighted averages are, but the LLM will make decisions that we don't understand. So you can just imagine, for him to set up guardrails and be the decider of what's right and what's wrong, it's an incredibly challenging task.
But I don't obviously, I don't wake up and say, I'm gonna impute my exact moral view and decide that this is okay and that is not okay and this is a better view than this one. What I think ChatGPT should do is reflect that weighted average or whatever of humanity's moral view, which will evolve over time. And we are here to serve our users. We're here to serve people. This is this is a technological tool for people. And I don't mean that it's my role to make the moral decisions, but I think it is my role to make sure that we are accurately reflecting the preferences of humanity, or for now of our user base and eventually of humanity.
Well, I mean,
so guys, that I'm going to wrap it there. That's my video on AI and morality and just adding some commentary to the Tucker Carlson, Sam Altman interview. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you did make it through the video, please like and subscribe. It does help a lot. And thanks for supporting the channel.